Welcome, everyone. My name is Judy Gilmore, and I'm the director of Opelka Gallery. Tonight, we are so excited to continue Terry James Conrad's wonderful series called Dispatches from the Iowa Booth. Terry's sitting in the Iowa booth now, which is a large site-specific installation he made for the gallery for his current show, Object Impermanence. He has done a wonderful job curating a lineup of all kinds of colleagues, collaborators, artists that he admires. And tonight is our 5th episode in this series, and he will be talking to Donté Hayes, who was a former student of Terry's and a wonderful artist, which has a great presentation for you tonight. I do want to let everyone know that the show is still open and will be through March 13th, so you still have some time to see the show. If you haven't come by the gallery, please do. We're open 12 to 5 every day except Thursdays. We're open to 12 to 8, and then we're closed on Mondays and Sundays. But we are available for appointments. If you would like to make an appointment anytime that we're not open to the public, please do feel free to contact us at Opelka at sage.edu. We really want folks to see this show. It's a really wonderful show, and if you can make it, any way that we can help you do that, we will be happy to figure something out with you. So please do contact us. But if you'd like to be here on Thursday, next Thursday evening, Terry is in residence and has been in residence in the gallery on Thursday evening. So if you'd like to come and see Terry, talk to Terry, watch Terry do his work, Thursdays is the time to come. So next Thursday, Terry will be here. And then of course, next Thursday also is the last in our series for the Dispatches from the Iowa booth. And Terry will be doing a really wonderful show and talk with Brian Dewan. So that's going to be really awesome. I think Brian's actually going to be in the gallery. Is that right, Terry? He's going to be in the gallery? Yeah, so that's going to be really special. So come Thursday. If you can't come Thursday, come anytime we're open. And if you can't come when we're open, email us and come anytime. It's really just a fabulous show. We've gotten great feedback. It is safe to come to the gallery. We want to let folks know we've been open since September. We have safety protocols in place. You're asked to do a quick health questionnaire. Your temperature is taken, and then we are asking people to, of course, wear masks and to stay socially distanced from anyone not in their household. So it has been a really safe place. We are capping visitors at 10. Most times there'll be far fewer than 10. A lot of times we'll be the only person in the show. So it's a really nice option for folks who are trying to get out of the house and find safe things to do as we all kind of brave the last of this winter weather. I also want to point everyone to our website, which is opelka.sage.edu. And from our site, you can actually find a link to the site that we created for this exhibition. You can go to our exhibitions page and there's a link there. And from that site, all of the recorded programming that Terry has done throughout this exhibition is available. So you can find our recordings there. You can also take a 3D tour of the show, as well as see installation shots and other photographs and images of Terry's work. So a lot of great content online if you can't join us in person. So please do join us however you can. I also want to let everyone know tonight that we welcome your questions. What's worked really well for us is if you have a question to raise your hand through Zoom or put your question into the chat box, or the fact that you have a question, and Terry or I will call on you so that you can actually unmute your microphone and we can have you ask your question live. So if you're not comfortable with that, again, just chat us and let us know. We can ask your question for you, but we really want this to be a dialogue, so feel free to do that in the chat. The last thing I want to mention before turning it over to Terry is that we are producing a catalog for this exhibition, and you can pre-order the catalog if you go to opelka.sage.edu/Conrad book. You can pre-order the beautiful catalog that's being printed and designed as we speak and will be available in April. So if you're interested in that, that is available, and we'll put that in the chat as well. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Terry.
Hi, everyone. All right. So thank you so much, Judy. Thank you, Amy. So I'm sitting in the Iowa booth in my exhibition, Object Permanence at Opelka Gallery. The booth plays on the design of an antique voting booth. So the Iowa booth is an educational space, a space to share ideas, a soapbox, a space to embrace our current Zoom life, functioning as a broadcast booth during the duration of the exhibition. For each event, the booth will look different. So in this case, you can see behind me that we have prints by May Lamso and DC Curtis, both of which are current MFA students in the printmaking area at the University of Iowa. So
Represent.
the Iowa booth, yeah. Tonight, the Iowa booth might be something more like a time machine as we get to learn about the beautifully crafted objects that both look to history and future by Donté Hayes. I feel a deep connection to Donté and his work. I met him as a graduate student in ceramics at the University of Iowa. His work transverses ceramic sculpture, printmaking, and community-based projects. In his own words, my practice pulls from my interest in hip hop culture, history, and science fiction. The artwork references the visual traditions from Southern United States, the Caribbean, South America, and the African continent. Donté graduated from Kennesaw State University in Georgia with a BFA in ceramics and printmaking and an art history minor. He also graduated in 2020 with an MFA with honors from the University of Iowa. Recently, he's had some pretty great residencies. One, he just freshly back from Township 10 in North Carolina, the Hambridge Center in Georgia, Watershed Center for Ceramic Arts in Maine, and Haystack School of Crafts, also in Maine. So he's also, in 2021, already had part of 3 shows: Unraveled, Restructured, Revealed at the Trout Museum of Art in Appleton, Wisconsin, curated by Tiana Bowie, and the Atlanta Biennial at the Atlanta Contemporary. He's also part of Mapping Narratives, New Prints 2021 Winter at the International Print Center in New York. Donté is represented by Mindy Solomon Gallery in Miami, Florida. Born in Baltimore and grew up in Atlanta, and he currently lives in New Jersey. It's an honor to welcome Donté Hayes to this episode of Dispatches from the Iowa Booths.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for having me at the Dispatches from the Iowa booth. It feels good to be in some way back in Iowa. With that, I'm going to share my screen. And so it's time for y'all to sit back, relax, get your popcorn ready, listen to the cool sounds of the Dispatches from the Iowa booth. When you think about my work, the first thing that always comes to mind is Black Panther. And yeah, I know everyone's like, yeah, Black Panther. Yeah, everyone loves Black Panther now. But back in the day, Black Panther was not cool. Everyone was like, man, you like Black Panther? He was weak. He's weak. He's like a wannabe Batman. I was like, nah, son. You don't know anything about that. Black Panther, not only is he intelligent, has great powers, but he actually has a whole country that he takes care of, and not just has a lot of money. As you can see on the right side, I have actually some of my actual comic books that I keep inside the plastic, because I'm a comic book nerd. But why do I care about Black Panther? Growing up, and even now, you never really saw any people of color that was positive, So like, especially when I was younger, you never saw anyone that was Black on TV that was doing something right and doing something good. They were always doing something stereotypical or like getting in trouble and then, making jokes about it. But there was no joke about Black Panther. In the bottom left, you can see one of my favorite TV shows growing up was Star Trek Next Generation. And once again, for me, that show was like pivotal in my upbringing, just to see like a Black person in a prominent position on a TV show, and especially going through something in the future. A lot of books that I would read, a lot of TV shows that I would watch, And like I said, I love science fiction, and I would never see that many Black people in the future. And that's the reason why Octavia Butler is like, to me, like she's the queen of Afrofuturism for one reason, because she brought what it feels like to be a Black and brown person into the future, and we're not going nowhere. However, Fahrenheit 451 was like the book that really like changed my life. It's like now I kind of feel like we're living in that Fahrenheit 451 life every single day. I mean, look what we're doing. Right now we're doing the Zoom Iowa dispatches from the Iowa booth, but it's actually on Zoom. You know what I mean? Wouldn't it have been amazing if I was actually with Terry and we were all together with Terry at the gallery? But you know, because of the future, we have to do it this way. Growing up, when I was like 19, instead of like everybody was like, oh yeah, you're gonna go to college. I didn't go to college till later in life to get my undergrad. So I didn't go to college till my 30s. But when I was 19, I started actually doing posters and designs for different hip hop artists that would come into Atlanta, as well as I would do drawings for Criss Cross and things of that nature. I even did a bunch of things for Outkast, as well as some of their CD covers and things of that nature. So I always tell this to people: don't ever feel like you have to like go to college to be an artist. You can be an artist because you said, I'm an artist. You know, I was doing art when I was young, you know what I'm saying, and being professional at it, not just claiming that you have to go to school first. So that always is pivotal in my work. And lastly, I always bring up, I love history. As Terry said, I even have an art history minor, but specifically the history that I've always wanted to learn more about is the Middle Passage. And so, and because when I was taught the Middle Passage in high school, we never even were taught like who were the people on those ships. All we were said that they were just slaves. We didn't even know what country they were from, what kind of food did they eat. And then they're like, oh, they're African. I mean, first of all, we know Africa is not a country, it's a continent. So we didn't even, they never even taught us like what area of so-called Africa they were from. Like, so we never even felt their humanity. We just saw them as just slaves. And then all of a sudden, Abraham Lincoln comes and frees the slaves, you know? So it was never like this idea of like who these people were, what kind of food did they eat, what kind of things did they dress, what kind of parties did they have? You know, we never knew that. And that always bothered me when I would like put my hand up and like, sir, can you tell me like where they're from? They're from Africa. Why you need to worry about all that? That's how I was taught in high school. And I had to do all this on my own, learn all this on my own. So in my research, I probably started doing a lot of research on this in 2012 for my own prints. And I'll show you a print that it kind of came from this idea. And then from there, I pushed this idea further. Ife hid right here, as you can see, is from the Kingdom of Yoruba. And if you don't know where Yoruba is what we now know as Nigeria. And for most of the enslaved Africans on those ships, they were most likely from Nigeria. Now, Ife is like the empire that from 11th to 15th century, it was like one of the most powerful empires in the world, that now like you would say, huh, I never heard of that, you know, but it was just like the Romans or the Greeks, you know. So that first was like a really powerful thing. And then to see this beautiful figurative sculpture. But the reason why I'm bringing it up, because in 1910, a German explorer named Leo Frobenius, instead of him thinking that Black people actually could make something as beautiful as this, he actually thought it was from the lost city of Atlantis. And that really struck me, that even when you find something in the place in Nigeria, you still think some Greek made it. So that always struck with me when I was making my work. So this first piece here is a print that I made. I guess this was 2013 when I made this. It's called Ghetto Blaster State of Mind. And I wanted to combine all the different avenues in my own personal life in the Atlanta hip hop scene when I was younger. And then just the idea that we all have some power that we don't know about, you know, and we can actually bring that out to further people. The bottom is like a representation of like if you had saw like the urban scene of city scheme, but it's also like when you look on a boombox and you see like the high low and everything. So I wanted to play on the way that music plays a big deal in bringing people together. So although that was cool and all, I wanted to push this idea even further. So I went to Europe, and of course in France, I was like struck by the beautiful cathedrals and everything. But what really struck me was the rose windows and the stained glass windows at the churches. And if you notice something for me, the first thing I noticed when I saw them was like something that struck me really hard was that those same images of the stained glass window looked like the same image outline of a Middle Passage slave ship. And that really struck to me. It even looked like the same stained glass, how like each African was in there like that. And you're like, wow, well, that's deep. And I was like, even in their religion, even in religion, subconsciously, they were using that even to say that they had the right to enslave someone else. So that really struck with me. And I always think about that every time I make work. So most likely it came to me to think like, okay, so what I'm really doing is I'm trying to find out what is a home. How do we constitute a home? What do we know what it feels like to be in a real home? Especially those Africans on that ship, they were being taken from their home to a new environment. And what does that feel like to be taken from your home and they have to create a whole new life and a whole new identity? So this also reminded me of myself, and especially since we're in the Iowa booth. In 2017, I left Atlanta and went to the University of Iowa. And I always felt so weird there because a lot of times when I walk down the streets, I'll be the only Black person I would see. Sometimes the only person that I would see that was a person of color may be Asian, but it was like very shocking if I saw someone that was Black and brown. Even in the visual arts building, there wasn't very many of us walking and going to classes in the studio arts building. And so the pineapple was a symbol that just automatically jumped to me and made me think like, okay, this is something I want to really investigate. And then most people are like, oh, okay, why you want to do a pineapple? But growing up, my mom and I, like this one time, this is really funny, and it always has something to do with fried chicken. But like, so after church, we were going over a friend's house, but I'd never been there. My mom knew them, so she knew they had a lot of money. So I was shocked when we like came to their house. We're like, oh man, their house is huge, you know? So like we knocked on the door, and it's like, I mean, the door was huge, you know what I mean? It was like one of those like you rang kind of doors, you rang, you know? And so we come in the door and it's like a big foyer, and you see like a gold pineapple, but we know, of course, it wasn't gold, it was brass. But just this, and I was like, man, what's that? It's like, why is it a gold? Well, you know what that means? That means they're going to welcome us and be really hospitable because they got money. So we're going to get some real good fried chicken tonight for dinner. And I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be great. So that always stuck with me about that symbol. However, where did we get that symbol from? First of all, pineapples are not grown on trees. It's a plant. A lot of times people automatically think it's it grows on trees like it's a coconut or something. And y'all looking like, oh, that is crazy. That's a pineapple? I'm like, yes, this is what a pineapple looks in the very beginning. It looks very alien-like. And I bring this up because that's how I felt like. I felt like an alien when I was in Iowa. Everyone was like, some were good, some were bad, just like anyone else in any place. But I always felt like I always had to be more. I'm the only Black person that they might have seen. When I was teaching classes, a lot of my students said I was their first teacher that was Black ever. And they were in their 20s, and I was their first teacher that was Black. That always struck with me. But yeah, so why am I bringing that up? So one, pineapples are a plant. Two, most people think pineapples are from Hawaii. And that's the reason why everyone thinks that while we got the idea of hospitality and welcoming through a pineapple. Once again, that's wrong. And yes, I know that doesn't make sense. I know some of you guys have also gone to Hawaii, got your nice sleigh, got your nice drink with the, coconut drink, chilling, enjoying yourself and saying, yeah, pineapples, I love this. Hawaii's so hospitable. Yes, they are hospitable, but that is not reason why we know that the pineapple is for welcoming. So where does it come from? Now, this is when everyone's going to be like, no, this is hurting. I thought you were going to be, this was all cute and all because you were talking about pineapples. I love pineapples. I feel like you're going to scare me for a second. But no, we got to keep it real. We got to teach you the real reasons. It's not from Hawaii. King Charles II receiving the first pineapple cultivated in England. Now, this is an important um, um, canvas reason because King Charles II was known as King Pine. King Pine as in King Pineapple, because he would bring his enslaved Africans to the South America and most likely Brazil, or then the Caribbean, like in Barbados, and cultivate the pineapple. So first of all, pineapples are not from Hawaii. They're originally from South America. The indigenous people there then did trades back and forth into the Caribbean, like Barbados and things of that nature, and they used it for their own like trade, for money, as a way of bartering, but it also was used for even beer. So they always knew what a pineapple could be for multiple things, but they actually ate the pineapple. Unlike King Charles II, he used it as a status symbol. They never ate the pineapple. When they would bring the pineapples back to England, first of all, each pineapple was actually worth like $8,000. So that was something that they saw more of like a decorative thing. This was like as if you were seeing me make a teapot or something. This was something decorative. They would never eat it. They will use it so they can put it in front of everyone. So this is how we get the idea of hospitality. They will have these great big parties and the big, Louis the 14th looking table of all the great foods and all the delicious desserts. And then they will have a pineapple in the middle. Now, after the pineapple would get bad, they would then, the people that worked in the castle would then give it to the poor. And King Charles II would say, now you can eat my shit, saying that even something that's worth $8,000 to me, I'm giving it to the poor so you can see my relevance, see how great I am as a human being. So the idea of those who were in colonial times, they actually knew that the pineapple, if you had a pineapple in someone's home, they knew that you were rich, first of all, and two, that it was only the rich could be hospitable and show power. Now, how do we get the idea of welcoming? Now, this is when it's really scary. So when the slave ships would come onto the dock, the foremen would run out and see that there's a new shipment of enslaved Africans are coming. So they will go and get a pineapple and actually hang it on a spike, so everyone would know that the shipment was there. So that's how they got the idea of welcoming. So when each African would come off that ship, that was the first thing that they saw. That doesn't seem very welcoming to me, if you ask me. So I was really struck by learning all this on my own. I learned all this history while I was at Iowa. So going further, I started to wanting to know more about, like, where was this pineapple and how did the pineapple become a symbol for, when we say welcoming, hospitable, for the colonial people, they saw it more as abundance and power. So this actually is a portrait of a Haitian woman, and this is from a Canadian um, painter who was very well known during the colonial times. And many of his paintings will always show a enslaved woman, with her breast hanging out and a pineapple and a cornucopia of food, showing that even their slaves could actually show them how abundant they are. So I wanted to like destroy that nation of that idea by creating this piece, and this is called Aphrodisiac. And I wanted to switch that all idea of who has control of someone's body. So even the eyes, I have like a third eye, saying that even though you are in segregation, you can still be show who you are, and that you will not be taken just because of how your subject is. And this was like the beginning of like how my work, ceramic wise, started to like grow and change and get to the work that I will talk about further into the talk. So although that was great, but it felt it was very just, it was too, I guess, literal. I didn't want to just make something that was literal. I wanted to make something that was more powerful, that like, okay, yes, this was a terrible thing, but I want to show something about like, what does it feel like to be welcomed? It's easy to say, yes, I'm welcomed, but how do you, but you know, when you walk into a room and everyone starts like stopping and like, oh, Donté's in the room, we got to be quiet now. You know, so you know what it looks like, but how does it feel like to be welcome? What is it like when you want to be welcome? Don't you want to feel comfort? Don't you want to be able to be nurtured? So those things really struck with me. Like I wanted to actually have that texture of welcoming. So I continued my research and started to go back to the beginnings of, like I said, in Nigeria. And I would go, instead of like looking more into like their traditions, I wanted to actually look at the clothing and the different headdresses that those traditions had, because I felt like though that was more important to me. That because if it's just like, I'm a big Lakers fan, I know if you have the purple and yellow, you automatically know it's Lakers. You know, so it's the same kind of traditions. If you're gonna go, if you're into sports, everyone has like this tradition that everyone does. Those who are artists, you know, they're gonna be a ton of people like in LaCroix. You know what I'm saying? So that's just the traditions that people have that are art people. You know, so when you see this is just what you would know, like, oh, if they're wearing this, that means it's an initiation, and they know, oh, this is the initiation from boy to manhood. You know, so I wanted to know that, because that's really comforting, because then you're becoming a part of a new community. You know, because we all want to feel like we are a part of something greater than ourselves. So I started really enjoying, you know, just looking at all the different ways that initiations can be changed by just the clothing that they will wear. And even their ways of living, you know, of raffia was so important. Those who know, whoever been into the South and they wanted to go, and especially in South Carolina, you can still see these same homes in South Carolina, and they were the slave quarters. But this one actually is in Africa. So they even changed, they never lost everything that they had there. You know, so I was thinking about that's important too, because that's a part of being one with your family, one with your home, having those same things. So raffia was another texture that I really made me think about. You could do so much just by that. And lastly, hair. Um, and that is one of the biggest things for me personally. A lot of people are like, okay, what does hair have to do with your work? Well, first of all, my mom, she has a lot of mental health issues, and I love her so much. And like growing up, you know, she would take her hair out and leave it in places all over the the house, or if we would go out, you know, in the car, she would be pulling her hair out there. So a lot of people will be like, "Oh, that's nasty," if you saw hair on the kitchen table. For me, I never thought that was something of disgust, something to be discussed about. It was something more like, my mom's here, then I know everything's good. So it was a loving thing for me. But however, you can switch that idea. If you have, you know, we're all living in, you know, these binge watching shows. So you can like CSIs and all those mysteries and detective shows, you always, the one thing that they do to find someone is through hair follicles. So even though like myself, I was the one thing that I also thought of, like, wow, hair does so many different things. Just like, even though I never been to Africa, the first thing I think of is like, I have parts of me is African, even though I never been there. And that's just through the hair, even though I know I don't have much hair right now, but I did have hair sometime, you know, and yeah, I gotta make some jokes in the booth, but so also, lastly, you see in the middle is like waves. And growing up, that was the thing you wanted to have. You wanted to have that cool wave in that hair, you know what I mean? So it's like, that also reminded me of like my love of music, but also the waves in the ocean, so I was thinking about that as well. So all these things starting to play in my head to like really to create this work. It's giving me a visual language. So lastly, I love Aboriginal paintings and the dream paintings of a pigment, and then they just dots. And that's how I feel like when I create, we're very transcendental. And this is myself in Iowa, in my old Iowa studio. So it's cool that, it's like in the booth in Iowa, now seeing me in my studio in Iowa. This is awesome. So this is how I make my work. So I make a form first, and then using a regular needle tool. And those who know anything about ceramics, this is nothing, it's very simple, nothing special, but I see it more as an etching tool, just like if I was etching a copper plate. That's how I use this needle tool, same kind of way. And I scratch into the surface to the point that I'm actually making a texture and form being one. So from there, like I said, I love science fiction, and I wanted to create something that actually started having some meaning into the work. And those who know anything, this is a Dalek from like the great TV show, BBC longest running show. It's almost as good as the episodes of the Dispatch of the Iowa Blues, almost, but in Doctor Who, these are Daleks who are actually the bad guys in the series. And what they would do is they would say, exterminate, exterminate, exterminate. And they felt like they would go to time and space and destroy and kill anyone that they felt like that was not good. And so they felt like they were the best things in the world. So I kind of felt like that could be something that I should incorporate. But it was interesting to me to see the way that they looked because of the bulbous shapes that he had. And it kind of reminded me of breast, something nurturing, but yet they wanted to kill things. And what's the other thing that we always do when we see a bulbous shape? They're always used as stress balls as well. So all those things started to play into this. Like when you want to really be comforted, you want to, it's always like a stress ball. So they all have that similar thing of nurturing, like a circle, a sphere. So I created this piece. It's called Dalek, and it's a a way to counterpoint against feeling that you're the only person there in a specific place that either you perceive or unperceived that you should be there. And it's always crazy when you're walking and you never know how you're going to be perceived in a space when you're the only Black person in that space. And so this was a piece that was really powerful and a great direction for me to create more work. And I found like that this piece was the first pieces that I made in this style. And it's all in a black clay. And so there is no glaze or anything. And I didn't want any glaze because that's not very welcoming when you have to put something on top of something. You know, we want, because then you're covering all the things that I want as a content. So that was very important to me, that the content comes from the clay itself, because it doesn't even, it's not even black until it's fired to a certain amount of heat. I fired to cone 5, but if it goes to cone 1, it will turn black on its own. And I thought that was powerful too, because I live this life every day, and you go through fire every day, just being who you are. And what does that mean when you have to go through life? So that's the reason why I made this piece. And this is the piece that I probably feel like it's the strongest piece I've made in this series. It's called Double Consciousness. And double consciousness is a term that was made by W.B. Du Bois, who, while he was a professor at school in Atlanta, College of Art, not Atlanta College of Art, but Atlanta College, which is now Clark Atlanta and Morehouse in that area in downtown Atlanta. And he created this idea of the double consciousness, how Black people feel and perceive themselves, and how white people perceive themselves to them, their gaze back and forth. And that really struck to me, because especially living in Iowa, I started feeling that same thing about, yeah, I'm living in this world, but then I have a body inside me, and I don't think those things that people automatically think that I am, So, but also you could flip that around. That could be just in my head too. I don't know, because you never know what is actually going on, because it's both double conscience. You're having a conscience, but you don't know what is really being seen or seen. So I feel like this is like one of the strongest pieces I've made. And, and I always think about this to help me continue making work. So this is how I was able to create this piece, because of that. And that's called Withstand. And that's how I felt like, once again, my love of history. And I was thinking about the triumvirate arch that you would see in the Roman, they would comment like, dun, 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 the emperor came, we did it. So that's how I felt. I was like, yeah, I did it. I made it through another day, saying I withstand another day. So, it feels like, hips, the strength of hips as well, like I'm here, I'm not going nowhere. And so that's the reason why I call this piece Withstand. So I wanted to continue to think this thing further. And then you're like, okay, what do you got a picture of coral sitting up there? Yeah, and okay, great question. Because like growing up, my parents, we would take us, like in the summertime, we would go all to these museums in like Gettysburg, where everybody else was going to Disney World, having a good time, going to Six Flags. We were going to like, historical places. And then, at the gift shop, they would always have like these coral, and the coral would be white. So I was like, oh man. So I automatically thought coral was white. But, that shows how dumb I was. Coral is not white. Coral, the reason why you see coral at those museums is because they're actually dead. So coral is supposed to be colorful. So that made me, I was like, oh man, that blew my mind when I really found that out. So I started in 2019, started working in porcelain and started making pieces in porcelain. And I took that idea of just like when those enslaved Africans were on that boat and they jumped overboard on their own because they didn't want to be a slave, or they didn't, or the slave captains on that ship threw them overboard because they didn't have enough food, or they died and they had to be thrown overboard. So that's when I started thinking, wow, all those things played a part. So when you're dead, you become just like the coral that was in the Atlantic Ocean. But so this piece is called Speak. So this is when I started making these in 2019. But now, 2020 happened, and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd died. And that took it a whole nother way, that like, this is the only time you see a Black person's humanity is through our death, So that's the only time we speak in death, not in life. That really struck me. So like, even though that wasn't my intention making it, that shows you like how work can continue to evolve just by things that are happening naturally in the world. So like now everyone's like, I guess you must have made that during, because the BLM movement. I was like, well, no, I mean, I was always in the movement before there was a movement. It just happened that now this piece is giving new insight, even, presently. So now we're going to talk about some newer work. This is a Maasai warrior headdress. Once again, I'm very interested in like the headdresses. And so what's the first thing when you notice when I see it? I see a womb. That's what it looks like. It looks like a head is coming out of a womb. So that gave me like the inspiration to create this piece, because my work speaks about the future. And I feel like if we're really going to change this world, we're going to have to be reborn again, just like how that Maasai warrior is wearing that headdress. That's the only way we can actually live and change things, if we start over. We just can't be just like, oh, we're going to do good things now, but then there's no accountability. We always have to have accountability. If you don't have accountability, things ain't going to change. So that's the reason why I created this piece called Womb. So in the future, we could always know, we can always think about how we can become reborn into a better place. This piece here is called Prepare. Like I said, these are all newer work. And this actually came from an idea I had, because Star Wars is like one of my favorite like series, but especially Empire Strikes Back. And if you say that the new movies are your best, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't want to hear it. You don't know what you're talking about. So just go somewhere with that. And but Empire Strikes Back always. So in the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, Darth Vader, he was looking for Luke Skywalker, and he had drones all over the galaxy looking for him. And so I started thinking, wow, that's deep. He was preparing a place for him because he was looking for him. And I feel like the work that I wanted to make, we're preparing a new place for people. So that's the reason why I called this Prepare. And it kind of reminds me of like one of the drones that he had, but of course I added my own little thing to it. But that was my initiation when I thought of it. So that's where this idea came from, because I felt like we must prepare ourselves for this new era that we want to really live in. If we want to say that this is the time of systemic racism, we're going to really stop it. Are we really preparing to do that? Or are we just talking and then no one is like saying, what have you done in the last 6 months? No one's doing that. So this is what this piece was coming from. Now, so as you can see, this is John Stewart. Yes, the real Green Lantern. I know there's Hal Jordan, but this is the real Green Lantern, John Stewart. And when when Terry was mentioning about how I had recently went to Hambridge, it was really dark there at this residency. I was there for 2 weeks in rural Georgia. I mean, it was so, when people were like, oh man, just get your phone out and then you'll have your flashlight. No, that ain't gonna work. You're gonna need to read the old school flashlight, the real one, not the one that you get from your phone and you just press that little button that looks like a flashlight. You couldn't see. You know what I mean? It was crazy how dark it was there. So that made me started thinking about like darkness, and because I'm already making work that's all Black, and like how can I show definition through that, but it was also like this idea of like whose fire is there. Like when I was making work in Iowa, there was no one there telling me, oh yeah, you're doing the job that I think you should be doing. You should be doing this, doing that. No, only I knew what this was because of the history that I've been studying, the work that I had been through from the beginning when I was younger. No one could tell me what was inside of me. So I created this piece recently called Lantern, this idea of like, this is the darkness inside you when no one thinks what you're doing is good or bad, and you're making work. And what does that mean when you're making work in darkness, and only is good, no one else is telling you it's good. And then you find out it's good, but you only know it's good because you believe it first. And that's what I believed in when I was making even the first piece, Dalek. Lastly, I want to bring you to this piece called Sanctuary. And I love to show this last because this is probably a piece that really shows how all of my studies and of the history can come all together. And you want to have a sanctuary when you're a person of color. We always are wondering, like, how are we going to live in this world? And we create our own environment sometimes because of that feeling of not knowing if this place is going to be hospitable to us, you know? And so I always think about like how you're going to create a sanctuary for everyone now, you know? I mean, look what happened during in the summertime. There were so many, you know, riots because the cops were angry. But then January 6th comes, there was no cops to be seen going to in DC. They just, some of them were letting them in, and they were, you know, it was chaos. But if that was Black and brown people, they would have never even got that far. So that always makes me think about like how we're going to have a true sanctuary in this world. So the bottom is like the idea of the breastplate. And the breastplate is something that keeps you strong, keeps you holding in the vulnerabilities. So things that are coming at you, you can still have the strength to go through it. The top speaks to, you know, to the, like a bouquet, or like the flowers of the fruits of all the hard work that you've been through, that you now can create something better than yourself. So that's the reason why I call this sanctuary. So with that, I want to thank you, and I'm looking forward to talking to Terry more about, you know, this little conversation that I brought to the table. And if you want to know more about my work, you can just look at me up on Instagram or my website. So thanks, everybody. That was fun. It's always cool to be inside the booth.
Donté, thank you. That was an amazing, inspiring talk. Wow. So,
And that was good. I did it in like 30 minutes.
it was wonderful. You know, yeah. No, I'm kind of in awe of your research, and then also research with personal history, and then you know, all the heavy truths that you share. So thank you so much for that.
I want to tell you too, thank you, Terry, because like I said, you know how the work began. You saw it from the beginning. I know you saw that piece, Aphrodisiac, in my studio. That was like one of the beginning things that I did my first year at Iowa. To see that, to something that looks very literal, to like what I'm doing now. So it's like cool to see, like, you know, the transformation, that you were there for the whole thing.
It was an honor. It is an honor to see. Um, I wanted to just ask a question to maybe get it started off, and then we can turn it over to the group if anybody has any questions. But I wanted to ask, you know, you talked about, you know, well, you know, mentioning all this, it's really heavy ideas that you're talking about, and then so much of your language is so also so hopeful, and you know, like talking about the sanctuary and search for something. And then I was wondering, oh, and I liked what you're talking about glaze and like not wanting, you know, maybe keep it vulnerable.
Yes.
You know, and I was wondering if you, the actual act of making, of like getting in the zone and doing that, is that maybe a close part of your getting to your sanctuary?
Yeah, I totally, because like when I was making pieces at Iowa, like making the form, I could do like in a couple hours. Like all the pieces there were either 18 inches or taller, and I could like do a form that size in like 2 hours. That was easy. You know, the long part of that was like like Dalek, for instance. That was like a 16-hour me just marking, and I didn't ever like do a break. I didn't have like a food break, or like not even a bathroom break, you know. So, and I have proof. You can I can tell many people that were in my studio, they would be like, man, Donté is just on some other thing. He was sitting in his chair for 16 hours straight and then never went to the bathroom. But then as soon as I was done, I would have to go to the bathroom. I'll be hungry, you know. So it's like I felt like I was like in my own space and time, you know, like everything that I went through, things that I want to see for my future or other people's future, and all those things will come together into the piece.
Wonderful. So does anybody have any questions for Donté? You can raise your hand in the window, or Zoom wise, virtually raise your hand, or if you can type in that you have a question in the chat. Oh, Tommy Santa Claus
Nice.
has a question. He was in the Iowa booth last week. He says, "Hi, I love your work. Questions: who are some of your favorite musical artists?
Mm.
And then, what is your superpower?"
Oh man. Okay. So artists that I really like, of course, I love Outkast. Sun Ra always comes. Growing up, my parents always had us listening to Funkadelics, Bootsy Collins. So I like it just because that's what I heard growing up. And I collect a lot of records. So those are the records I listen to. Rubber Band Man, T.I. So you guys say that, but also there's an old school rubber band man that no one knows about, and so he was in the 70s. So that's another person I like too. And my superpower probably is well, I don't think I have it. If I had a real superpower, is that the question? My real superpower or the superpower that I want?
Both.
Okay, cool. All right. So I always wanted to be able to be like multiples, so I could be like 100 of me, so I could be doing something and doing something else, doing things of that nature, So I always wish I had that kind of power, but the real superpower that I guess I have is being open to being open, not being afraid to taking a chance and listening to others and wanting to hear their ways, and then I get to speak mine, and then we can learn from each other. So I feel like being open is very important to me. She's I don't criticize others, you know what I mean? And if you're open to other people, they're gonna want to understand where you're coming from.
That's
Doesn't
true.
mean you have to agree, because I don't have to agree with everybody now.
Yeah. And Tommy says, "Thank you."
Yeah, thank you. Great question.
Melody Davis asks, "Such intricate meditative work. I enjoyed the African slides too.
Mhm.
Do you have any suggestions for how to get students interested in the art of Africa?"
For me, it was easy because I was disappointed that no one ever talked about it, especially those who are in that know a little bit about ceramics. These used to always bother me too. It's even though it's in Asika, and I'm not trying to hate on Asika, I think Asika is good, but they never talked about. They don't ever really speak about African pots. If they do go and talk about pots outside of Western culture, they're talking about moon jars, which is great, but they're not talking about all different pots. And I feel like that's something that things need to be changed about that kind of concept. So for me, I never felt like it should be easy. All you gotta do is just say, look at these pots here. Especially, all you gotta do is go Ghanaian women potteries, because women in Nigeria are the ones that create the pots. It's not something that men do.
Cool. So, Lise Prown has a question about, have you been influenced by scarification? I love all the many historical and art historical references embedded in the work without being literal.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. So I've been working when I was at Township 10 recently in North Carolina, which is right outside of Asheville and Marshall, North Carolina. I made some work that's, had a lot of pattern making, because right now the works that I showed didn't have any patterns. And now the work's starting to have patterns and things of that nature. But I'm seeing that idea of scarification more of systemic racism. You know what I'm saying? Because those are the scars that we can continue to have in this country, and we never really did nothing about it. You know, like even now, all the things that happen at DC, we're like, oh, let's not talk about it. You know, we have a new president now. We shouldn't be talking about that. You know, it's been there, done that. No, we need to clean things up.
Well, thanks, Dante.
Mhm.
So Judy Gilmore has a question.
Hi, Dante. Great presentation. I also fully agree with you about Empire Strikes Back, just for the record.
Nice. Nice.
I want to, we did a show a few years ago on Afrofuturism, and I'm fascinated by Afrofuturism, but I have to say, like, I'm still, even after working with this amazing curator and all these artists, it's still a concept that like just escapes me. And I feel like there's such amazing kind of hopefulness in it, to like this idea that you can really reinvent the future. But I feel like almost every artist I talked to who references Afrofuturism in their work has kind of a similar story as you, is that they really like seeing like black and brown characters in science fiction as children, like just really changed the way they thought about their future and what they could do, which I think is so interesting. And I love that part of your background. What I'm curious about is like your work, your forms, the sculptures your ceramics that you're doing. They don't look futuristic to me,
Mhm.
but at the same time, when you talk about them, they feel so hopeful. So I'm just wondering how you kind of knit that narrative with the actual forms. I mean, to me, they are just these beautiful, simple things that could be ancient, they could be now, they could be future. But I'm just kind of curious how you layer that kind of Afrofuturist genre on top of these beautiful forms.
Well, yeah, great question. Thanks as well. Well, first of all, I feel like when I make the work, I see them in three. I see them as the past, the present, and the future. So in science fiction, there's science fiction movies that, okay, for instance, like Lord of the Rings, that's a sci-fi movie. Even though, you know what I mean? If like when we talk about Star Wars, it was actually long time ago, right? So this is how I see my work. This was made a long time ago. Actually, this has already happened, you know? So you're looking at work that has already happened. You're just seeing it now. So to you, you might see it gets a pass, but just like when you see Star Wars, they're saying this was done a long time ago, but yet they have a futuristic look. So I kind of played on that with my work as well. So I thought that would be a fun way to like actually explain that. Second, I want the work to speak about the past, but yet at the same time, share this present that we're living in. So if we share this present that we're living in, the only way that we can understand this present is through the past sometimes. And then from there, we can make a better future. The reason why, like I said, I made that piece Womb, you know?
That's great. Thank you. No, I love the time traveling nature of that. So that's really great. Thanks.
So I think that's a really wonderful place to call it a night. And Dante, wow, just it's so nice to see everything, the story laid out and the rich research. You're such a great artist and an inspiring individual. The way you even talk about these serious issues, and then um, you're able to be playful and also share how heavy this is. You're just a wonderful light and so hopeful. So thank you for everything that you've taught me at school and all that. So
Yeah, we taught each other, Terry. That's what I was so glad that you were in my, committee,
mm.
and it's great to be in the booth with you. Another amazing episode.
Yes, indeed. So everybody, if you're on Instagram, go follow Dante and he'll answer more questions if you come up with them later, I bet, if you write them on Instagram.
Yeah, I'll definitely. I have, like I said, I'm open.
So lastly, I just want to mention that next week at this time, Brian Dewan will be performing. So if you can come, visit the Iowa booth at the same Zoom link. So thanks, everybody. Judy, do you have anything you want to end with?
No, just thank you both. Donté was wonderful, and
Thank
Terry,
you.
thanks for bringing Donté into our orbit. Just fabulous work, and really wonderful to hear from you directly, Donté. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judy.
Yep. Have a great night, everyone. Again, come see the show. We're open through March 13th.
Good to see you, Dawn.
All right, see you, Donté.
Yeah, bye. Thanks, Terry. We'll
Bye.
talk.